Hey, good morning everyone and welcome to Webcast Wednesday. My name is Avni Gala and I'm the marketing manager here at FineTech. Today Webcast Wednesday invites you to a special presentation in which Sean Caribou from Fortinet will talk about security beyond the perimeter, which is shrinking the attack surface with FortiGate, FortiSandbox, and FortiClient. So let's look at today's agenda. For those who are new here, I'm going to do a little introduction on FineTech. Then we're going to do today's presentation by Sean, followed by Q&A. And finally, we are going to do our 2 raffle drawings for Amazon gift card. So for those who are not familiar with FineTech, we are a value-added distributor that specializes specifically in network security and IT security solutions. We work with companies like Fortinet, AlgoStack, Bradford Networks, Exablocks, which is now StorageCraft, IBM, and Recmount IT. So these are the companies that we distribute products of. In fact, we have been the 2014 and 2015 Distributor of the Year for Fortinet, and we have been winning this title for quite a few years now. The services that we provide include inventory. So we are one of the value-added distributors that will hold inventory for customers well-built. We provide financing. We give you flexible payment methods. We do sales support from initial quote to close. Any marketing support like events, webinars, advertising campaigns, and any technical services from demo to deployment. So if you need an extra hand, we provide hand to the demand. So that was about us, and before I hand it over to Sean, let me brief you on his bio and what the webinar will cover. So Sean has been working in the IT field for approximately 17 years. Wow. 5 of those years he spent serving in the US Navy as a cryptologic technician, and after getting out in 2004, he spent the next 8 years working for General Dynamics as an IT contractor. After coming back to the States in 2012, he went to work for Hagerty Insurance as their senior network engineer. In 2014, he took a role for Fortinet WAR in a pre-sale engineering role, and then came to Fortinet in 2016. So that was about Sean, and in today's presentation, he will cover how the FortiGate can be deployed to provide as a security gateway unified threat management appliance, how sandboxing is becoming a cornerstone of any security posture, and how FortiSandbox mitigates threats, and how endpoint integration into the rest of the network security posture with FortiClient is critical. So without further ado, I'm going to now hand it over to Sean to further explore the subject.
Thank you, Vani. And I will share the screen. All right, so let's. All right, so as Vani said, my name is Sean Caribou. I'm working with Fortinet for a couple of years. Well, just over a year. We're going to talk about the FortiGate, FortiSandbox, and FortiClient in this presentation. You know, part of the agenda is, for those of you that don't know who Fortinet is, I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. Then we'll talk about FortiGuard, because FortiGuard is, as you can kind of see there in the presentation, is the secret sauce. It's what makes FortiGate and all of our other products stand out, is the FortiGuard Labs component of it. We'll talk about the perimeter security with the FortiGate, and we'll talk about the sandbox, you know, identifying some of the unknown components and the way that it kind of does it. And then we'll talk about some of the endpoint stuff that we have with the FortiClient, and then we'll just touch on how it all integrates together to give you that cohesive security fabric that we talk about. So, company overview. So, Fortinet was founded in 2000. A couple things to kind of take a look here is we have shipped over 3 million devices. And actually looks like that kind of got darkened out a little bit there, but we have to date we have shipped 3 million devices, and that's like more than twice of what any other security vendor has actually shipped out. Next person coming in line would be Cisco. So we have the #1 unit share worldwide, and that is very important when we start taking a look at what FortiGuard Labs is and what they do. So one of the other questions is like, well, I know that I've seen Fortinet in a lot of the small retail offices, but what about in the other big offices, enterprise, MSSPs, all that kind of stuff. So, so when we start looking at who our customers are, we are in 10 out of the top 10 Fortune telecommunications companies. We're all over the place. So we have a large scale of products that we can actually meet pretty much any needs of any customer. So FortiGuard Labs, some of you may or may not have seen this map before. We kind of reference this as the PP map because it looks like war games happening, and this is 0.01% of all the attacks that FortiGuard Labs is actually collecting and analyzing and doing things with. So as you see there, the FortiGuard minute is the title of the slide. So per minute, FortiGuard Labs, they intercept 21,000 spam emails. And this is all the statistics from every FortiGate that we kind of have out there. So, so every FortiGate also acts as a bit of a collector, and it's reporting back to FortiGuard Labs as far as like the most active attacks and whenever it finds malware or anything else along those lines. And it's a group of approximately, last time I checked, it was like 320 people that we have that actually work at FortiGuard Labs just doing the threat analysis piece of it. And that is, I want to say it's about double what any of the other lab teams have for any of the other competitors. So then if we keep on looking here, we see here 160,000 malicious website get blocked, 95,000 malware programs neutralized. Per week, that's 46 million spam rules, 1.4 million URL ratings. So we do all kinds of craziness whenever it comes to the threat mitigation. So when we're looking at the database, we have the largest threat database of anybody in the world. So 290 terabytes just of threat samples. That's going to be your antivirus signatures, it's going to be your intrusion prevention signatures, it's going to be your spam signatures, all that kind of stuff. So, and as you can see there, 312 zero-day threats have been discovered by Fortinet so far. That is also more than double what the next person is. So the FortiGate. So what is a FortiGate? Well, FortiGate is our firewall. It's obviously designed to work with the perimeter security, but also does a lot of, it's very flexible the ways that you can actually deploy it. So perimeter security is what usually is the most common deployment method. We also do a lot of internal segmentation. We have offerings to be able to secure your cloud infrastructure. We can do the data center, and then we also do distributed and small business deployments with FortiGate. So one of the questions that we get is like, well, what makes Fortinet so different? Well, one of the things that makes us different is that we actually spin our own silicone, and by that means that we have our own processors, so and ASICs that actually get put into these. So we're able to accelerate that hardware. So one of the things that we at Fortinet kind of pride ourselves on is that our hardware tends to be faster and than everybody else's, and we do it at a much more competitive cost point. So we have network processing ASICs, and we also have content processing ASICs to be able to do SSL offloading, all that kind of stuff. And why the ASICs matter is because we're able to accelerate that traffic, and it doesn't become a bottleneck in your network architecture. So whenever you're doing things like SSL inspection, it's usually very, very taxing on the box. So being able to have an ASIC that is designed specifically to accelerate that traffic is going to be key without having to have your end users complain that the network's kind of slow. as I said, we scale throughout the all the businesses. So we have smaller retail SOHO type of offerings with our, which is going to be identified by our 2-digit series. We have the mid-range, mid-tier, which is going to be the 3-digit series, and then we have our data center and our large enterprise. So we're able to go from entry level to mid-range to high end. We have virtual appliances for the cloud deployments and virtual environments as well too. So, so one of the things that we kind of pride ourselves on is having a GUI that's actually very user friendly with when you go to deploy these products. So it flows quite nicely. You can usually figure out what is it you're trying to accomplish. Going through the GUI, we obviously have the command line components as well. Again, the mid-range series, when we're looking at this right here, you know, this is going to be for a lot of your more mid-range markets. NSS Lab, we work very closely with those guys to do a lot of the testing on our products. So we pride ourselves a lot on the third-party validation pieces of, rather than me just sitting here telling you how great the Fortinet products are. We rely very heavily on the third-party. So the data center firewalls, the 1000, 2000, 3000 series, you know, they have multiple ports. You get 10 gig, 40 gig, even 100 gig ports on some of these boxes. These are very fast boxes. The latest box that we just came out with is actually rated to be a terabit firewall, and that's you know, anything that people really care about, because what comes into play is that we start putting all those additional services on there, and being able to put it in the data center is going to I'm sorry, I kind of got distracted here, got lost for a second. The terabit comes into play with being able to sorry. So the virtual appliances here, we do have offerings for the Azure, Amazon as well, for out in the cloud to be able to secure those cloud environments. So a lot of your deployments here, we're obviously you have the public cloud, and that's where your Amazon, your AWS, all that's going to be. The carriers, that's going to be our chassis-based firewall. We have the internal network. We do internal network segmentation. It's becoming a much more critical piece of your security posture of your network today is internal segmentation, because what ends up happening a lot of times is that people they just get, you know, security at the perimeter. They don't really think about all the other components that are actually happening. Once people are actually in the network, the rest of the network is just vulnerable to crawling attacks. So we see this a lot with like CryptoLocker or other, you know, pieces of ransomware that once they get in, they're able to just crawl the internal network untethered and unrestricted, and then it leads to many other boxes getting, you know, compromised as well. So one of the key differentiators is that the FortiGate does do SSL inspection, and we actually do full SSL inspection. And what this means is that the FortiGate in itself is actually acting as a full proxy. So it's using certificates, and what that means is you send off your traffic, the FortiGate's going to actually intercept it. It's going to open up that packet because it has the certificates. It's going to look deep inside that packet, make sure it's clean with malware. It's going to inspect the content, and then it's going to re-encrypt it and send it off. So the way that it kind of looks is that the FortiGate is actually being the man in the middle, more or less, because it's going to be the one doing all the work. This is very, very taxing on the box, but it is definitely going to be something that makes your environment much more secure. The other method that we have is the certificate inspection, and it's only going to inspect the header, make sure that the servers are who they say they are, and then it's not going to be able to really get in to the packet to inspect the payload to make sure there's nothing malicious inside of it. The difference between the two is that with the certificate-based inspection, you're not really going to get prompted for any kind of certificate errors or anything else along those lines. With the full inspection, this is a deployment where it needs to be planned, because there's a lot of things that don't necessarily play well whenever SSL is being inspected because of that man in the middle. So applications like Google, sometimes they don't always play nicely with the speedy protocol, or going out to iTunes. A lot of your Apple applications will get broken if you don't have an implementation plan put together to get full SSL inspection integrated into your environment. So it does make your environment much more secure. So FortiSandbox, identifying the unknown. Sandboxing is definitely becoming a much bigger cornerstone of anybody's security posture today. So what sandboxing is it's kind of like it's a virtual environment that is kind of used to emulate it's used to emulate a number of different clicks, and just kind of emulate an end user, just kind of see how a particular file or something like that is going to behave. So it's part of our advanced threat protection solution. There's a number of different components to the sandbox. We have the code emulator, you got the AV engine, it does cloud queries, and it boots up a couple virtual machines on its own. Then there's a number of scripts that it kind of runs through trying to emulate your end users clicks, and it does monitoring and reporting. So there's integration with the sandbox and the FortiMail, as well as the FortiGate and the FortiWeb. And the way that it actually works is a lot of times your end users, for example, they get something malicious in a web page or something like that. You can actually send that off to Sandbox to just kind of see how that is it going to behave. Firstly, like whenever they click on that, does it actually try to install something malicious on this on the operating system? Does it actually go out to a command and control site? So it just tries to look for the behavior of your malware. Let's see. So the key components here is whenever I was talking about FortiGuard Labs, the FortiGate only keeps track of like a certain number of the most active signatures over the past couple of years, and this is going to be the same across the board. Any firewall that you have is actually going to do the same thing. It's just going to keep track of the most active signatures that are actually out there. So whenever the FortiGate doesn't actually have a signature for it, what's going to do with the integration with the sandbox is it's actually going to take it, send it over to the sandbox. The sandbox is going to have a much more extensive database. I kind of liken it to like the encyclopedia of malware. So I'll send it off to the sandbox. It'll do that additional pre-filter, and it'll say, well, I don't have anything for that. So then what it's going to do after that is going to go out to the cloud, and FortiGuard Labs is going to take a look and see if there's any additional intelligence that is a part of that about that particular piece of malware. And if it doesn't find anything there, then it goes into what we call CPRL, which is Code Pattern Recognition Language. And this is actually a proprietary piece of software that we actually have that does the code emulation. So one of the things that a lot of people don't really know about malware is that typically malware, it evolves, and the amount of times that it evolves, just within a day is usually anywhere from, 20 to 100 times. So for example, if I wrote a piece of malware, in the morning, by noon, that piece of malware is usually evolved just, a few times, but there's always going to be that core signature that's actually in there. So with the CPRL, what it kind of looks for is it's like, well, does this look like CryptoLocker? Kind of acts like CryptoLocker. Most likely there's a signature in there somewhere that's going to identify it as CryptoLocker, even though it might be a variant. So if we are able to recognize it, then we can actually write a signature for it, and then we can block it right there. And then if we still don't have that, then we put it into the full virtual sandbox, and we put it in the full virtual sandbox for full detonation to hopefully get the thread to expose itself. Kind of like I said, we emulate user clicks. It's going to speed up the clock because some malware is time-based. And then from there, we'll open up a number of websites. We'll open up some Word documents, and this is all, automated. So it's not like anybody has to, do anything to make it kick off that. One of the other questions I usually get is like, well, how long does this usually take? Well, for the CPRL component of it, it's usually anywhere 3 to 6 seconds. The full detonation in the virtual environment, to emulate all the user clicks, you usually have a maximum, depending on how far it has to go in the scripting process, is usually a maximum of 5 minutes. And then from there, we do the callback detection, where we make sure that the threat's actually legit. And then from there, we do the intelligence sharing. So that's going back out to FortiGuard Labs, so then it can actually get pushed out to everybody else that's actually part of the Fortinet community. But with going back to the distributing the real-time updates. So if you have a FortiGate within your environment, or a FortiClient, or a FortiMail, or any of those components, once that signature for that piece of malware is detected, it's going to write the signature for it right there, and it's going to push it straight out to all those components automatically, so you don't have to intervene with it. So again, you heard me talk about FortiGate, FortiMail, FortiClient. It all has the native integration with the FortiSandbox right out of the box. And again, it's blocking as many threats as possible. You can use a sandbox for payload analysis. And again, this is the way that we actually kind of detect those 0-day threats, is with all of our sandboxing technology. There's 2 different methods that we can actually deploy the sandbox. So one is we have the FortiSandbox in the cloud, and then we have the FortiSandbox with the on-prem. And the major difference between the two is at the level of integration with the other components that you have. So the on-prem is going to have the ability to dynamically update the FortiGate, the FortiMail, all that kind of stuff. And it's going to have that signature generated for your local environment within 5 minutes. The sandbox in the cloud, it doesn't necessarily have that same level of integration that the on-prem does. So it's not going to update the FortiGate or any of your other components until the time that it's set up to actually update. So to get the new signatures. So which is usually anywhere from 1 to 4 hours, and in some of the things it's going to update every 24 hours. So FortiClient, FortiClient is our unified endpoint. We use it for the VPN. It's actually free to download itself. It's VPN. It's also just an AV that does the web filtering components as well. It's available in a number of different varieties. So we can do PC, Mac, Chromebook, Apple, and Android. There is a Linux piece to it, but the Linux version of the FortiClient is is very limited in its in terms of its functionality, and it's not necessarily the AV component. I think it's the VPN only. So as you can kind of see, that's a little bit about what the interface looks like. So why the FortiClient? Well, first and foremost, it has that security fabric integration. So whenever I go back to the sandboxing, some of the integration that the FortiClient has with the sandbox is that one of the biggest pain points that a lot of people have, especially in like an enterprise, is a lot of times people will, they'll just randomly click on links. So what you could do with the FortiClient is before people actually click on those links, especially in their mail, because a lot of times people will get these spam emails where it's like, look at this little joke here, and it's a bunch of jumbled up words, and people just try to read it, be like, yeah, it's really cool, forward on to, and then all of a sudden you see down there there's a little link to automatically share it or something along those lines. Well, one of the things that end users are very notorious for is they like to just kind of click on things without necessarily always thinking about what it is that they're actually clicking on. So once they click on that, a lot of times that machine's going to get owned. But with the integration with the sandbox is you can actually scrub those links with the FortiClient, because they'll send that link up to the FortiSandbox to say, hey, is this link legit? How does it behave? What is it doing? And before it'll actually allow the end user to actually go to that link. And it's the same thing with the downloads. So you could actually prevent, users from downloading malicious content until it actually clears the sandbox. So, and again, right there, endpoint awareness, compliance, and enforcement. One of the other pieces is the telemetry. So that's the integration with the FortiClient and the FortiGate. For example, is once you register the FortiClient with the FortiGate, it actually would make sure that you have a particular revision of the AV signatures, or maybe you have to, have certain versions of code, and then if you don't, then maybe it'll, depending on how you set up the rules, it could actually allow you to only go out to the internet and not allow you to access corporate resources based on how you have the profile set up with that. So it works side by side with the FortiGate to know what you have access to on the network and what you don't. So the advanced threat protection piece of it, I talked about that already. The automated prevention of known and unknown threats with this, through the integration of the sandbox, and then the secure remote access mobility. So it's also our VPN, but that also works with the two-factor authentication and single sign-on. So security fabric integration. Just watch a little animation here. It's aware, secure, actionable, scalable, and open. So again, the FortiClient is trying to do real-time prevention of cyber threats, but if it doesn't have that, it's going to send it off to the sandbox if it's not sure, or the FortiGate. So, and again, this works with the Macs, even with the mobile endpoints that we have as well too, with the FortiClient. So right here we have this little from the enterprise security group, an enterprise security strategy. Acceptable endpoint security tools must plug into a broader security architecture than operate in an endpoint security vacuum. And that's what we see a lot of times with your typical endpoints, is that they're so siloed that they don't have any kind of integration with any of the other pieces of the network. So what does that do for you? Well, having that integration is going to obviously help you with your remediation, because as we all know, it's not a matter of if you're going to be compromised, it's a matter of when. And once you are compromised, what really matters is how quickly you're able to actually remediate that and clean up the mess. So again, here, whenever we're kind of taking a look at this, I kind of touched on this. This is kind of what it looks like here. You get your global updates there from FortiGuard Labs, as you see in the middle. And then everybody's always contributing to the community. But for your local environment, the FortiGate has that ability to, validate, enforce, and actually contain, quarantine certain machines if they don't meet a certain compliancy level. And then with the FortiClient, it's also going to be able to send stuff up to the sandbox for detonation if you wanted to actually see how things are going to behave. And it's the same thing with the FortiGate too. Is the FortiGate can send things up to the sandbox as well based on certain profiles. So again, talking about the FortiClient is that it's obviously our AV updates are scheduled every hour. So it's geared towards preventing malware. So it's also an application firewall, so you can actually determine what kinds of applications are actually going to be allowed to run on that machine if you wanted to. So you get very, very good granular controls over the applications that are on a particular machine. So it helps you to reduce the attack surface. A lot of times whenever people are doing like drive-bys or whatever it is, they don't realize all the additional things that actually get installed on their machines when they're doing freeware. So the web filter, you do have the ability to enforce safe search on there. I know that there's a number of schools that actually like this component because it helps them with SIPA compliance. Safe searches. It can be a bit tricky depending on the browser, depending on what it is. Again, it kind of goes back to what I mentioned with the SSL inspection with Google. So sometimes Google doesn't always necessarily play nice with the safe search. Then you obviously have your exclusion lists. And then your vulnerability scanning. This is also another component that kind of comes from the EMS piece of it, which is the centralized management, which we'll talk about here in a second. But this is where you do your scheduled scans, and then it'll actually report back to like a FortiAnalyzer or whatever other central log component that you actually have on your network. And as you can kind of see right there is that it's we are also top rated with a virus bulletin. So like I mentioned before, we do work very closely with NSS Labs. We always get a recommended rating on their endpoint protection. So VB100, we're always in the upper right quadrant up with them. Same with AV comparatives. We're right there, right behind Kaspersky. So one of the questions that I get from a lot of people is like, well, how come I don't ever see that on Gartner's report for endpoint security? Well, part of that is that we didn't meet the requirements to play in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for a while, and one of those requirements was that we had to have a central management component of it. And the way that we used to actually manage it was that you would just register the FortiClients with the FortiGates, and then all of your management for the FortiClients was actually done on the FortiGate. We actually took and we separated that piece out, and we created the enterprise management server so that you can actually now control, tens of thousands of endpoints from that management console. So, advanced threat protection use case to prevent drive-by downloads. This is a very big problem, especially with a lot of your spam emails. People don't always pay attention to the little additional web pages they get brought up, and things are downloading in the background. So your application firewall can actually prevent that from happening on the FortiClient. So, and then if it doesn't get caught on the application, then the web filter that's actually built into the FortiClient should actually be able to prevent that as well too. And then obviously go out to FortiGuard Labs as a malicious website. And then the end user is good to go. So preventing known and unknown malware, you do the vulnerability scanning, so you can kick off the vulnerability scanning from the EMS. Make sure that everybody's doing the patching. Again, that's all going to be based on the telemetry profile that you have set up. Is okay, well, is this person with this application, are they allowed to actually get on network and access enterprise resources? Well, no. Well, then they're allowed to go out to the internet to get the patches, so that particular piece of software can actually meet compliance. So, and then we have the antivirus, and again, that's all coming from the updates are coming from FortiGuard Labs, and it's also reporting back to FortiGuard Labs. So, and then for anything else that's unknown, for like your PDFs or your downloads or anything else along those lines, we can submit those objects out to the FortiSandbox for detonation. And as you can kind of see here, there's these other little documents in PDFs. So one of the things a lot of people kind of tend to overlook a lot of times is that you can actually embed malware into Word documents. You can embed malware into spreadsheets, all through macros. So having that ability to send stuff up to the sandbox, especially whenever you aren't familiar with the source that you're getting it from, depending on your business, is definitely a key consideration. So secure remote access and mobility. We're talking about the VPN piece here. So there's a number of different ways that we can actually utilize the VPN that's integrated with the FortiClient. First one is you can either do your basic SSL or IPsec VPN. So this is actually just going to be your SSL or IPsec VPN client. And then you just enter your username and password, and then it'll let you in. The second one is that you can actually do the SSL and IPsec with two-factor authentication. And with the two-factor authentication piece of it is we actually have what's called a FortiToken. It's just like your typical RSA token that you kind of see, or that a lot of people are familiar with. And it just creates a one-time password for like every minute. But one of the things with the FortiToken is that it's either you can actually do an app on your phone. There's an Android, and there's also a Linux piece, not an Android and an Apple piece to it. And then we also have the hardware token if people really do want to have the hardware. And then third is the SSL IPsec VPN with two-factor authentication and single sign-on. So effectively, with your two-factor authentication, once you have it integrated in with like a FortiAuthenticator to do single sign-on, it'll just allow you to give you that access to the network wherever it is that you go. So you don't have to log into every individual component, whereas sometimes, I want to log into VPN. And then as soon as I log into VPN, I want to access resources. So I have to enter my AD credentials again. Well, with the single sign-on, you don't have to really do that. So again, with FortiClient deployment here, it can go anywhere. We have a lot of flexibility with that in terms of the deployments because of all the different products that we actually support with it. But the management also comes from the FortiClient EMS. So what is EMS? It's it gives you that ability to deploy FortiClients. You can actually you can integrate it with LDAP as well as other systems. It gives you that ability to scan and quarantine. So with the remote scans, you can kick it off a scan if you suspect somebody's machine is compromised. And again, it's also you can do the vulnerability scanning. And again, it scales to hundreds of thousands of devices. And that was actually one of the key differences with the FortiGate as well too. Is sometimes whenever customers would go to upgrade their FortiGate, they'd have to effectively have to repurchase the additional license as well to to be able to register the FortiClients with that new FortiGate. So by having that separate component, it's actually made the FortiClient a much more scalable solution as well through EMS. So a lot of the analytics that you get from there, you can also send the logs from FortiClient to like a FortiAnalyzer or some other central logging device if you had. So, and going back to the telemetry piece of it, this also goes to some of the things I already kind of talked about with the network access control. So here, you know, this illustration that we have is obviously you create your policy in EMS and then you send it down to your endpoint. You can take your endpoint, you can register it with FortiGate. Once it's registered, the FortiGate is actually going to monitor and apply, you know, those actions based on the profile that you actually have for the telemetry piece. And then if they don't meet, then you can either quarantine it or just restrict it. So with that, feel free to ask any questions. I'll turn it back over to Bonnie.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for taking your time out to present and educate our partners. We have now opened the floor for questions. I see already one from Yvonne. So are you able to read the question, Sean? Or do you want me to read it out to you?
Yeah, I don't. Oh, actually, hold on one second here. The question: does the Cloud Sandbox come with regular FortiGuard licensing, or do you need the enterprise? Is the Cloud Sandbox good enough for SMB? We use FortiGate 3060-100. So, Ivan, to answer your question, yes, you need the enterprise bundle to get the Sandbox. So what I would say is that, you know, the Cloud Sandbox is definitely going to help out with the SMB for sure. It's better than not having anything. So with the 3060 and 100, yeah, I don't see any problem with that. So typically we always try to push people to try and sell the enterprise bundle versus like the UTM bundle. Anyways, because it also gets the command, or actually the mobile protection in there as well. And then Warren, is FortiClient free for full installation with AV? It used to be a product with list price. So Warren, the question there is FortiClient in itself is actually free. You can actually download it. So the product that you were actually purchasing was the ability to register FortiClients with the FortiGate and then having that central management piece of it. So now what we actually have is we have the EMS. So that is what you're doing is, so you're paying for the ability to centrally manage these because anybody can actually go out to Fortinet.com and they can actually download FortiClient for free. And then James asked, are these slides on the Fortinet partner portal? Like to send them to a few of our clients. This slide deck is not, this is one that I kind of put together, but I can probably send it to Avani and she can
Yes.
send it out to you guys.
Yes, so that's how it works. You know, once after the presentation, you can send it over to me and I will upload it on the partner portal for our partners to view. And I will also send you guys an email regarding the same.
And I completely apologize to all you guys. I know I kind of was a bit distracted because we just finished up another presentation here for another event that we had. So I apologize for that.
No problem. Do we have any other questions?
Simon, what can Fortinet do to protect the network against Internet of Things devices inside the network? So it's a very good question, Simon. And in that particular scenario, we already have that ability to protect the network. But what comes into play is actually the network design for the Internet of Things. So it's where things like internal segmentation and, you know, making sure that your policies are written appropriately to only allow the Internet of Things devices to the resources. I mean, typically these Internet of Things devices are just going to be headless, so they only ever need to ever get out to the internet to work. So when you're writing those policies, you definitely want to make sure that your Internet of Things devices are segmented off so that they don't have access to anything else other than the internet. So we have multiple ways that you can actually do it. If you want to create a separate VDOM on a FortiGate, for example, you could do that. You could actually quarantine them. You can identify them by MAC address, all kinds of things. There's so many different ways that you can actually secure that. It's very flexible, but it's all going to depend on the end user's architecture. Fortinet main competition in this market segment. Which market segment? Is that, I would say for the sandbox, okay. I would say the main competition for sandbox is probably going to be somebody like FireEye. I do believe that that's the main one that most people kind of go with. And then just, I think going back to main competition and for market segments, just in terms of just Fortinet in general. So usually in the SMB markets, we usually find ourselves competing mostly with people like Meraki. Those are usually those ones. A lot of times, sometimes it might even be like Aruba's, depending. Once we get up into the mid to enterprise tier, it's usually just going to be the Cisco's and Junipers typically. Firewalls, a lot of times, PAN is a very formidable person that we come up against as well too. So, Carlton Landry, when you have the UTM bundle, is there a limit on FortiClient VPN licenses? Well, actually, I'm actually glad that you asked that question, Carlton, because one of the things that we at Fortinet do not really believe in is we don't really believe in nickeling and diming everybody to death. I mean, it's a key differentiator. We don't charge anybody for SSL VPN. We don't charge anybody for IPsec VPN. You know, it's all part of the box. So you don't have to purchase any additional licensing if you want to use VPN. The box already comes fully licensed. So whenever you purchase your services and your maintenance, that's what it kind of comes down to. Is you're purchasing those subscriptions to FortiGuard Labs for your AV, for your IPS, your anti-spam. So you don't have to pay anything additional to use VPN or any of the additional features on the box. You don't have to pay for routing. You don't have to pay for any of that stuff. The only thing that you're paying for is the subscription services.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Let me share my screen meanwhile. Okay. So once again, thank you, Sean, for taking your time out to present. Before I jump onto the raffle drawing, I'd like to show you our sales territory map. So if you have any further questions or concerns, you may also directly contact your regional sales rep, or you can always email to me, marketing@finetech.com, and we will be happy to answer for you. Also, I would like to show you our partner portal. So if you guys are not partnered with us, it only takes a minute. You will have a lot of information, access to a lot of information on our partner portal. We have previous webinar recordings, presentations, and even, Fortinet solution talking points, partner promotions, and, additional resources along with the territory map that I just showed you. So you can have access to all these and on our partner portal, and it only takes a couple of minutes to register. Now it's drawing time. Let me, okay. Okay, I have already included everyone's name here, and I'm going to do two drawings for $25 Amazon gift card. All right, Jeff Sorensen and James C. Crew. Congratulations, guys, on winning the $25 Amazon gift card. I will later email you with your e-code. And thank you again, everyone, for attending. And thank you, Sean. We will see you guys on March 15 with Rick Leclerc from Bradford Networks, who will help us learn about the integrations of Bradford Networks with Fortinet solutions. And the invites for the same will be sent out tomorrow morning. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.